Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 353. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the afternoon of Sunday, March the 10th, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. Topic of today's essay, in fact, the whole podcast today is getting paid and spending it. Another money podcast. But then you know what? We're all about the money, some more than others, but those that say money isn't everything either have more than they need or they're fooling themselves. And actually, no, that's not true, because money is not everything. But you know what? If you don't have enough, it makes life very difficult. What's enough money? Well, I mean, it depends. It depends on what you're looking to do, what your goals are. I can tell you that the recipe for success is basically very simple. It doesn't matter if you make tens of thousands, or if you make tens of hundreds, or if you make tens of millions of dollars. Here's the formula: spend less than you earn, and you'll be fine. It's kind of basic like that, okay? But getting paid and spending it, because getting paid is one thing. Okay, and everybody wants to get paid. And very few people think that they get paid just enough and don't want more. That's not to say that you think you're being paid fairly, but most people are always looking for, okay, I know I'm getting this, but how do I get that? That's kind of the way most people think. But just as important about getting paid, because what do you do with money? You spend it, okay? Virtually all of us spend most, if not all, if not more than what we earn. That's just how people are, okay? And as inflation changes, as things change, the way we earn money is changing, sure. But what also is changing is the way we spend money. Things have gone through the roof expensive. We talked about that in the last podcast about how inflation is not as bad as it used to be, but gasoline and food prices aren't included in the inflation numbers, which is silly to me, but it's how they've always done it. But basically, we're going to talk about three things: stocks, basketball players, college basketball players, I should say, and luxury items. One of my favorite luxury items, wine. So let's start off with stocks and bonds, okay? The stock market last year was unbelievably good. Stocks and bonds both went up. The year before that, stocks and bonds both went down, okay? And usually it's one or the other. But this year they both went up. And why? Well, stocks have proved remarkably resilient even while bond yields are going up. Now, many think this is a bubble because of inflation, especially in the stocks linked to artificial intelligence. Now, there's an alternative to that many people, myself included, tend to agree with, or tend to think the reason is why the market's doing so well. It's called productivity. We talked about this a while back. In fact, about 6 months ago, I did a podcast on how the main problem we have is productivity has been down. Well, now productivity is up. In fact, productivity gains, that is more output for the same amount of work, allow more growth without inflation, helping to explain the market's switch from treating a strong economy as bad for shares to treating it as good, okay? Now, the risk is that the market is treating the undeniable short-term productivity gains of the past year as evidence that long-term gains are on the way. Now, in the short term, inflation has come down because the economy has been more productive. In other words, the large part of the pandemic damage due to supply chain, that was reversed. So it's not that we're getting more productivity than 10 years ago, but more productivity than 2 years ago, everything being relative. Now, at an economic level, the investor belief is that there's more capacity for growth than expected. So more growth, which means more profits, can be had before the economy overheats and leads to even more inflation. Now, in the long term, investors, in fact, not all, but many investors, hope that the gains in new technologies, particularly artificial intelligence, will lead to a sustained productivity boom akin to that in the 1960s and then again in the late 1990s. Higher productivity means higher interest rates for higher interest rates than otherwise. But for the stock market, it should be offset by the higher profits that growth brings. Okay. For sure, the gains in productivity last year aren't repeatable, but since it was driven by the reversal of pandemic-era supply stocks, but betting on it being followed by an AI productivity boom has a good story behind it. And working on the impact of new technologies or even individual companies, let alone the economy as a whole, is tough. Now, investors might be getting carried away with this, but that's better than having a bubble. So if you've got your money invested in the market, higher productivity may mean a repeat of last year. And the part of the podcast getting paid means if you're in the market, if you're investing, you might get paid more this year. Now, there's a group of ball players, I should say a group of people who are ball players who have never got paid. Then recently they got paid. And now some of them are going to get paid like never before. Dartmouth's men's basketball team is now getting paid. You know why? Because they joined a union. Now Dartmouth's men's basketball team, all 15 of them voted to join the Service Employees Union International, SEIU, Local 560. And it was immediately challenged by the school, which has begun to appeal the interpretation from the National Labor Relations Board that basketball teams are workers who should be able to collectively bargain their conditions of employment. Now, the biggest obstacle to the Dartmouth Big Green claiming, that's their nickname, the Big Green, claiming that they ended amateurism as we know it, isn't their decision that's rejected by the courts. It's the fact that somebody else already beat them to it. The game is already over as far as amateur sports go with colleges, as whether college athletes can be paid to play sports. And the most obvious sign is that even the NCAA's leaders have stopped trying to turn back the tide. Now, in the most significant concession in its existence, the NCAA is no longer fighting the notion that at least some athletes can and should get money from their schools, specifically for competing in sports. Instead, they're actually calling for it while trying to stave off full-blown employee status. Now, think about that. How unfair is that? First, you said, no, nobody gets paid except for the coaches in the school. The players are amateurs. They don't get paid. Now they're saying, you know what? Some players can get paid. You know, the real good ones. The rest of them, they don't get any money. How is that? If the power forward and the point guard, they get paid, but the other forward and the center, they don't get paid? What are you talking about? How unfair is that? That'll never fly. In fact, in the most significant concession in its existence, the NCAA doesn't even fight over the notions that some players can get paid. In fact, they're saying, yeah, we can pay some because they don't want everyone to get paid. Now, there's one simple explanation on how we got here. Anyone who brings a case against the NCAA and finds this decision appealed to the Supreme Court can now expect a explicitly friendly audience there after the 2021 Supreme Court unanimously said that strict NCAA limits on compensation in the form of education-related benefits, that violates antitrust laws. So the super conservative Trump Supreme Court sided on the side of labor. And really, it was kind of a no-brainer. Now, as a result, it's open season on the NCAA with a barrage of legal attacks around the country, all of them pursuing either employment rights for college athletes or their ability to be compensated for the work they're performing. Why is that bad? Now, meanwhile, a decision is pending from a judge in the Philadelphia headquartered U.S. Supreme Court's appeal for the Third Circuit Court over whether a different federal labor law applies to college athletes, the Fair Labor Standards Act, which would entitle them to at least minimum wage. All athletes, minimum wage. Now, it's one thing to have the conference realigned and the television contracts and the lawsuits, but it's another to have the courts and states and government agencies signaling for the first time that they may be less willing to give legal protection or difference to the NCAA for other sports. Now, it's a combination of the number of attacks, putting it all together, and without question, this is kind of unprecedented. Now, the NCAA leaders don't say that they're expecting to win in court. In fact, they also don't try to defend the idea that they're not paying players in the top Division I schools. They certainly are, and they don't deny it. Instead, they're aiming to usher in the era themselves, unveiling a plan in December for the richest schools to form a new tier in which they could cut name, image, and likeness deals directly with athletes and pay them unrestricted benefits, nominally linked to education. In other words, you're not really going to school, you're playing for the club. Newsflash, that's been going on for a long time. Now, they hope that there'll be enough of this to persuade Congress to pass legislation that stops their doomsday scenario. That would be that college athletes are declared employees of their universities. All college athletes, the gymnastics team, the swim team, the fencing team, they're all declared employees by their universities, in which the NCAA says it'll just wreak havoc on every school, forcing athletic departments to cut programs or potentially shutter entirely lower down NCAA 1, 2, and 3 schools, divisions, that is. Now, the NCAA's president 1 year, Charlie Baker, Charlie Baker has been the NCAA president for 1 year. He's a moderate Republican who spent 8 years in charge of Massachusetts. He acknowledges that he can't bank on that happening fast. Baker says, I completely accept the fact, in the grand scheme of all things, that Congress is working on, but this is one that probably is not at the top of their pile. As governor, we never assumed that we would get into the first legislative session. In other words, we always assumed that we would be probably shooting for the next one and maybe the one after that. In other words, sure, the ball's rolling, but it's going to take a long, long time for things to happen. Now, while Baker was speaking with reporters, a federal judge for the Eastern District of Tennessee granted a preliminary injunction in a case brought against the NCAA by attorneys general of Tennessee and Virginia. Now, they are suing over restrictions on boosters offering name, image, and likeness, NIL, based on deals to prospective college athletes as an explicit recruiting inducement. Now, the NCAA is blocked from enforcing any restrictions on athletes negotiating NIL compensation deals. And the judge said that the challengers seem to be set for success under antitrust laws when the case is first heard. Now, think to yourself, why would everybody, pro sports and colleges, be okay with the top players being paid, but not the others? Because it reeks of inequality. It reeks unfair. So we will offer you a scholarship, okay, but we'll let you do a name, image, and likeness deal where you get $400,000 a year. Well, how would you like to be that guy? How would you like to be? I'm in the locker room with you, and my payment is nothing, zero. I go to school. Your payment is $500,000 and they buy you a car. It would make for a horrible team, but it doesn't matter because if you've watched college sports recently, especially basketball, it's not a team sport anyway. It's me. It's been that way for a long time. It's getting more so because all they want to do is have an NBA scout see them, find them, discover them, and write them a big contract. That's what everybody wants to do. Now, who else is supporting this? Well, the NBA and the NFL, by the way, because they want the colleges to be able to pay their own players. You know why? Because then they don't have to. There is no minor leagues in the NBA or in the NFL. Yeah, there's a D League in the NBA, and there's a what do they call it, the practice squad in the NFL, but it's nothing. I mean, Major League Baseball, what do the Cardinals have? 6 farm clubs they have to support? I mean, that's where they get their talent, from their farm clubs, from their farm systems. And the NBA and the NFL don't do that. They let the colleges do it. So, of course, if they're going to pay these players, let them pay them, because that means they don't have to. If the NCAA goes bust and the only college athletes that they're going to have are the ones that are just pretty good ball players, and they really are going because they want to get the education, and after they play their 4 years at the school, then they can go ahead and be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or whatever they want to be, a nurse, a school teacher, but they got their free education. And those are not the athletes that are going to play professional sports, and they realize that. Years ago, Missouri had a player. His name escapes me. I should have known his name. But he actually started with Missouri, and then he transferred to SLU, I think. Or maybe it was the other way around. And this guy was a really good ball player. Probably wasn't going to play professional. If he was going to play professional, maybe he would be an NBA walk-on, or maybe he'd play in Europe. But the kid was pretty good. And he was an outstanding student, okay? He wanted to be a doctor. Well, he transferred, and I think he started at SLU. I think he started at Mizzou and then went to SLU, okay? And after his 4 years, because he had the 1 year out that was because of the transfer, he had one more year of eligibility. So he just announced to the school that, hey, I'm out. I'm not going back next year. They said, oh, no. You don't understand. You've got one more year of eligibility left. He said, well, I know that, but I'm done. I graduated. I got my degree. I only played 3 years, but I went to school for 4 because I had to sit out one because I transferred to the school. I said, no, you don't understand. You really can play another year. He said, no, you don't understand. I don't want to play another year. The deal was, I play basketball for you. You give me an education. I have my education. I'm going to go get my doctorate degree and become an MD. Bye. That, my friends, is a student athlete, but they just don't have many of them at all. It's a dying breed, and I've never understood why colleges have gotten away for so long the way they have. I mean, the top, if they pay their athletes nothing, and you talk about getting paid or not getting paid. In fact, not only do they pay them nothing, but quite often these young men are from poor families, okay? They don't have any money, and they can't do things like buy them a bus ticket home to see the family on Christmas. They can't do that. They can't buy them a hamburger if they take them across the street. They can't do any of that, okay? But in most states, I don't know that for a fact, in many states, I think most, but I know many states, the top paid state employee is the guy who runs the basketball or the football program. Millions and millions of dollars a year. And they're probably worth it because they bring even more than that into the school. So I'm not arguing that they're not worth it. But if the coach gets tens of millions and the school gets hundreds of millions, you can't cry poor and say, yeah, well, we can't buy the kid a bus ticket home because we just don't have the money. Nobody buys that anymore. Absolutely nobody buys it anymore. And it doesn't float. So it looks like while some of the college athletes are already getting paid, it looks like they're all going to be getting paid someday in the very near future. Okay, once we've earned our money, now we get to spend it. And everybody wants to spend money on fun things. What are fun things? It's not the rent. It's not the gas bill. It's not the electric bill. It's not the car payment. None of that's fun. We understand it's necessary because if you want to live someplace, you got to pay a house payment or a car payment, or even if your house is paid for, you still got to pay taxes and you got to pay insurance. So there's still something you got to pay for. Most of us need a car to get from point A to point B. That's just how our society is set up. But there's some things that are fun. Vacations are fun. Going out to dinner is fun. And it kind of matters how much is left over at the end of the day as to how much you can spend on the fun stuff, okay? Now, one of the things that I enjoy doing, I think most people enjoy doing, is going out to dinner. And it's gotten very expensive to go out to dinner. But some restaurants, and we touched on this a week or two ago, some restaurants are doing what I think is the right thing. In fact, the trophy wife and I, for Saturday night, we went to a new restaurant just in our neighborhood called Cugino's. Okay. It's new out here in western St. Charles County. They've got one in Florissant and have had it for years. Okay. And it's a bistro with some Italian fare. It's fine. There's nothing special about it, nothing fancy about it. The prices were very reasonable. Okay. It wasn't stupid expensive. But here's the catch. The prices were reasonable, but the portions, my friend, weren't big at all. In fact, our bill for food was $26 before taxes and tip. Now, we were at the bar, and our bar bill was about $26 too. So, but that's just how these things work. We each had a hamburger, a different type of fancy hamburger. Her side of fries is what she got, and what I got was a side of pasta with red sauce. It was really very good. Okay, $13 for the hamburger, but it wasn't very tasty. It was fantastic. It was tasty, done right. Presentation was good. It just wasn't slapped on a bun and thrown in front of you. And $13 is not a ton to pay for a hamburger, believe it or not. But here's the thing: it wasn't that big, and there wasn't much food. And I think that's becoming a trend. And I don't know that that's a bad thing, okay? There's a term that's been going on for a while called shrinkflation. And it's, the price hasn't gone up, but you don't get as much as you used to. It used to be for $13, you get, what's the store? Red Robin, okay? You get the endless fries, okay? And look at the waistlines of many in our country. Do we need endless fries? Okay. Maybe we're best served if we have a meal that's not too expensive, really tasty, but not a ton of food. Okay. That's a trend. I liked it. We'll be back there again. Just understand that afterwards, we didn't get dessert there. We actually stopped at Schnucks. And those of you that don't know it in the area, Schnucks has the best deal going on for dessert. If you're out and about and you want dessert, well, what would I do if I told you that you could go someplace and get dessert for $1 for both of you? You think to yourself, what? Dessert for two for $1? What are you talking about? After 7 o'clock at night, Schnucks has their donuts on sale for 50 cents. So the trophy wife and I, we go to Schnucks. I picked out a Devil's Food donut with white icing and M&Ms on top, and she got a caramel Long John. The bill was $1.04 because of tax. That's it. So for $1, we got a nice dessert too. So there's ways that you can do this stuff, okay? And there's ways you can get your luxuries without paying an arm and a leg. Now, I personally love wine. With food normally, but alone as well. And wine can be expensive, but it doesn't have to be. In fact, there's a myth that says, there's good expensive wine and then there's swill. Well, that's not true. Once upon a time, that was true. You get a nice Bordeaux, a nice Napa Cab, or Boone's Farm, okay? There's a lot in between now, a ton in between. I will tell you that the vast majority of the wines I drink are in between. I almost never pay more than $10 a bottle for a bottle of wine. And I don't drink swill. I've had swill. I don't drink it. But there's a columnist in the Wall Street Journal. Her name is Letty Teague. She had an article about Costco, okay? I'm a big Costco fan. And Costco has a bunch of wines that are really reasonably priced. And she talks about this. In fact, she talks about it in her article. She says, look, how do you make a wine that's both cheap and good? Well, Costco does it by the way they do everything. Razor thin profit margin. That's the secret behind Costco's Kirkland Signature wines. In fact, founded in 1983, Costco began producing its Kirkland Signature wines a couple of decades ago. The first two wines, one was an Australian Shiraz, and there was also an Alexander Valley Cabernet. They debuted in 2003. Just 206 cases was all they produced. Then they produced a champagne, and it was a real champagne from the Champagne region of France, not a sparkling cold duck that they call champagne, okay? Winemaker Manuel Janison, for the past 20 years, has been the brains behind the Kirkland Signature Brut Champagne. It's a soft, appealing blend of Pinot Noir, Pinot Meunier, and Chardonnay grape. It sells for $20 a bottle. I think $20 a bottle, that's not cheap. This is for real, live, honest to goodness from the Champagne region of France, Champagne. Now, that's astonishingly cheap for champagne from that region. I'm not a big champagne fan personally. I don't buy it, but a lot of people do. And there's a difference between champagne from the Champagne region of France and other champagne. Now, Ms. Teague also says that, said as much to DC Flint, and this is a guy, that's his name, DC Flint. He's with Mac Flint Incorporated, DC Flint MW Selections, and he imports Costco champagne and sells it to the distributors. And he does a lot of other wines, including Kirkland Bottlings from his base in Louisiana. He says Costco works on extremely tight margins. In other words, they make just a little bit on each bottle. Now, unlike big champagne houses and wine houses that spend big money on marketing, Costco doesn't market its own label wines because they only sell it at the store. Flint further cited the stable ability of champagne grapes due to long-term growing contracts held by Janison, who makes 150,000 cases of Kirkland champagne annually. 150,000 cases. Now, Flint imported Janison's own champagne, Janison and Phil's, for years before the creation of the Kirkland champagne. Now, the importer described his role as a liaison between Costco and winemakers and wineries, helping to develop and distribute Kirkland wines, and also tasting sample wines before the final wine is determined with members of the Costco corporate wine buying team. Now, Flint is also involved in the production of Kirkland Signature Marlborough, New Zealand T-Point Sauvignon Blanc. Now, Marlborough is not the cigarette. That's an area of New Zealand, okay? He imports and sells to distributors in the U.S. and 14 other countries. Every year, 750,000 cases are produced at the Marlborough-based Vinlink Winery, which Jeff maker Jeff Lee describes as state-of-the-art and purpose-built to produce the signature kiwi grape. Kiwi is what, not the fruit, it's what they call something that's made in New Zealand or New Zealand people. Now, Lee has made the Kirkland T-Point Sauvignon Blanc for more than 10 years. His 2023 Kirkland Signature Marlborough New Zealand T-Point Sauvignon Blanc, $7.49. That's it. It's an easy drinking kiwi wine that's easily equal to its peers that cost 3 times as much. Ms. Teague said it's zesty and zippy. Glenn Hugo of Girard Winery in Calistoga, California, is another winemaker who works with Flint and in the production of Kirkland Signature blends. Hugo produced his first Kirkland wine in 2010 and has since turned out an array of wine for Costco while keeping his day job. At Girard, Hugo makes wines that cost many multiples of their Kirkland counterparts. In 2021, the 2021 Girard Rutherford Napa Valley Cabernet costs $120. The Kirkland Signature Rutherford Cabernet, $18.99. By the way, I've had it. It's very good. He finds it satisfying in producing wines at both ends of the spectrum. Now, what's the difference? It's the same grape from the same region in the same bottle. How is it different? I don't know. I don't think it is. I've tasted $120 bottles of wine, and I was unimpressed, to say the least. Now, Hugo is also the talent behind the 2022 Kirkland Signature Blend Russian River Sonoma County Pinot Noir at $11.99. I've had that too. It's very good. Now, although this was Hugo's first vintage, this Pinot Noir has been in the Kirkland lineup for 10 years, growing from an initial production of 15,000 cases, now 120,000 cases. It's a real pleasant red with Pinot character marked by crisp red fruit. Now, Pinot Noir it's a red wine, but you can drink it with fish and chicken because it's a very mild red wine. It's not the deep, dark jammy looking tasting wine like a Cabernet or a Shiraz or anything like that. It's much lighter, okay? It's not a rosé. It's a true red, but you can eat it with chicken and fish. I had it with salmon on Friday. It's gentle notes of oak coming from aging 6 to 7 months in tanks with French oak staves. Now think about it. They don't age it in oak barrels because an oak barrel costs $1,000. They put it in a vat, a stainless steel vat, and they put some oak staves in there for flavor. How is it different? Don't know that it is, okay? In fact, Budweiser, the Beechwood aged Budweiser, once upon a time they used to put staves of beechwood in the vats. Now they put pellets of beechwood. I know that. A guy from AB told me. Now, as with all Kirkland signature wine, the Russian River Pinot Noir is a collaboration between the winemaker, the Costco wine team, and an importer or a wholesale broker, in this case, Mr. Flint. Now, prior to bottling, Hugo sends Flint and several Washington-based members of the Costco team several samples in which they taste and discuss over a Zoom conference. This usually happens a couple of times before the final blend is determined, says Hugo. Now, MISA, that's a Dallas-based importer. They collaborate on 2 other wines that Ms. Teague liked. There's a Kirkland Signature Bordeaux Superior. I've had that. $7, actually $6.89. It's a blend of Merlot and Cabernet, which most Bordeaux's are. They throw another blend in there somewhere, but all Bordeaux's basically, in fact, all French wines almost are blends, meritage. That's just how they do things. The Europeans grade wines by appellation. We grade them by grape. Okay. But it's fantastic. There's another one. It's a 2021 Kirkland Signature Premier Cru Chablis, $19. It is highly regarded from the Premier Cru vineyards. Those are the best vineyards in France. They get the best wine from the best grapes in the best regions of France for their blends. In fact, there's another one she talks about that I've had. It's a Kirkland Sonoma Old Vine Zinfandel, $10, made by Zach Long and produced at Vintage Wine Estates. Okay, he noted that this lush wine comes from the same old vine vineyards as Zinfandel's, costing several times its price. Costco is a fantastic choice for a lot of stuff, but it's an amazing choice for wines if you're a wine connoisseur. Now, you don't have a Costco membership. You don't want to go to Costco. What do? Okay, well, there's many other things. Before we do that, I did want to talk about my favorite Costco wine of all. It's a Mendoza Malbec, a Malbec wine. That's the grape from the Mendoza region of Argentina. I think it's $7, and I'm here to tell you, I've never tasted a better red wine. And that includes wines that were $100 and more. I've never tasted a better one. It's $7, folks. There's other French wines at Costco. Basically, if it's a French wine Kirkland at Costco, get it. It's going to be good, okay? You don't go to Costco, there's other options. Company called Illinois Cellars makes a Norton wine. Now, Norton is the premier grape of Missouri, okay? It's similar to a Cabernet, not quite as robust, but equally as good. But this winery in Southern Illinois puts it together. It's called Illinois Cellars, and it's a Norton wine, and it's fantastic. And it used to be $3 or $4, and they sold out. So they've bumped the price up because they can. It's $7 or $8. I mean, it's still under $10, and it's a Midwestern Cabernet is what I like to describe a Norton wine as. If you're into Pinot Noirs, as we talked about before, but nowhere near a Costco or don't go to Costco, try a Pinot Noir called Castle Rock. You can buy it anywhere under $10. They have it at Schnucks for under $10. Castle Rock Pinot Noir. It's fantastic. It's got a twist top, which, by the way, that's not a bad thing. Another thing that makes wine cost is the bottling. A fancy bottle with a cork means it's going to cost more. Europeans for years with their everyday drinkable wines, none of them have corks in them. In fact, some have tops. It's like almost like a soda bottle, okay, where you pop it off and you really can't put it back on because the bottle of wine was €2 and you're going to drink it all at dinner anyway, okay? Castle Rock Pinot Noir, try it. It's really good. It works well with a chicken or fish or even a mild pork or something. Don't try it with barbecue or steak. It's not enough wine to cut the taste. If you can't go to Costco, go to Aldi. There's a lot of good wines at Aldi. Some of the Waking Owl wines at Aldi aren't half bad. Actually, some are half bad, but they're, what are they, $4 a bottle, $4 a bottle? And some of them aren't that good. Some of them are okay. Try them and you be the judge, okay? None of them are great. Some of them are awful, but some of them, for what you pay, it's fine. But there's one wine at Aldi that I like a whole lot, and it's a Giretto Pinot Grigio. You don't have to remember the name. Just remember it's the white wine with a bicycle on it, okay? And I think it's about $6. And Pinot Grigio is a light, happy, not sweet, but certainly not dry wine that goes well with, it just goes well to drink, okay? You don't have to have it with food. If you're going to have it with food, have it with a mild fish, maybe not necessarily a salmon. You can have it with salmon. That's almost a little much. Any white fish, a snapper, or any type of baked white fish, it works real well. And again, for $6, you don't have to have the Costco membership, and you get yourself a very good bottle of wine. Do I like wines? I do. I do a lot. I know maybe I've bored many of you to tears because you're not wine fans. Maybe you prefer beer. Maybe you prefer spirits. Maybe you're a teetotaler. You don't like any of that, which all that's fine. But a glass of wine with dinner can be wonderful. I would suggest it. Even if you're not a drinker, but you're thinking, you know what? I'd like to try some of this stuff. Buy an inexpensive bottle of wine. Pop the top on it. Have a small glass with your dinner, you and your mate, and it can last a couple 3 days and it'll be fine. Once you take the cork out of the wine, you can go ahead and keep it around for a week or so. It's not going to be horrible. It's not going to be as good as it was the first day, but it's not going to be horrible. The right wine paired with the right dinner makes a good meal great, and a great meal unbelievable. And one more thing about wine. I've said this before. I'm going to say it again because I can't stress enough how important this is. If you're into wine, get the right wine glasses, please. Don't get the ones you can throw in your dishwasher. In other words, if it's a wine glass you can put in your dishwasher, it's not the right wine glass. I like Riedel. It's a good brand. You got to wash them by hand because they're Austrian crystal. Get a good crystal wine glass, okay? A wine glass will make or break the wine too. It makes a bad wine drinkable, a drinkable wine good, a good wine great, a great wine unbelievable. I mean, I've told this story before. I have a hand-blown Austrian crystal sommelier's glass that I drink wine out of, and I will tell you, it turns it into an experience. I'll take a $7 Mendoza Malbec and just breathe that in and drink that stuff. And if I drink a half a bottle of that, I've gone to heaven for $3.50. Okay. That's all I got to say. So enjoy your wine, enjoy your dough. You're getting paid for it. Spend it, but you don't have to spend it all in the same place to have a lot of fun and enjoyment. That's it. I'm done. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's the email address. And if you would, send me suggestions on the wines that you like. If you're not a wine drinker, the beer you like. If you're not a beer drinker, if you like spirits, the spirits you like. We're getting into spring and summertime when people are out and about more and being more social with one another, especially outdoors. And I'd like to learn what you like to drink so I can try them and expand my horizons as well. Okay? Okay. That's it. I'm done. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.